Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe, free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS show's all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Let's cut the bullshit. Do you work with people who act like they know everything? Or they don't want to hear an opinion that differs from theirs? Ever have to make sure the boss thinks your ideas were his or hers? Managers who ignore new ideas or act out at those who present them are sometimes described as decisive or strong-willed. I think they're actually displaying what I refer to as insecure arrogance. Author F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote that the test of first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas and still retain the ability to function. Managers who succumb to insecure arrogance often lack the confidence to weigh or wrestle with multiple points of view. Their insecurities lead them to act like they're completely certain their way is the best or only way. Clearly, insecure arrogance can be detrimental to an organization's culture and overall productivity. Limiting exposure to multiple ideas or potential solutions stifles personal and professional growth of the perpetrator and those around him. How can we know if we've been displaying insecure arrogance, and how can we avoid it? Do you actually seek diverse opinions? Are you able to adjust your approach after hearing a compelling idea? Strive to understand the rationale behind differing viewpoints and weigh multiple opinions before making decisions, and still, as Fitzgerald wrote, maintain the ability to function. What can we do when we encounter insecure arrogance? There really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. However, the first step involves understanding the emotional makeup and personality style of the person displaying insecure arrogance. If the person's data-driven, provide details to make your case. When working with a more instinctual, emotional decision-maker, tell real-life stories or anecdotes that they can relate to. Ultimately, though, it's about your relationship and strengthening it. Treat them the same way you treat your best clients. You know what makes your top clients tick, right? You find creative ways to reach and influence key customers and to make it about them. Apply these same techniques with your boss or peers to overcome their insecure arrogance. Our guest today is Doug Northcook, one of the Pittsburgh region's creative problem solvers, and we're going to talk a little bit about people with insecure arrogance. Doug has a lot of ideas on how to work through that. He's one of those people who becomes a guru in just about anything he likes. He's willing to take calculated risks, and he makes things happen, doing so as a leader of multiple businesses. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. I want to get into a lot of stuff with you because I just think our listeners will really enjoy the multitude of diverse interests and successes that you've had. So since I'm a coffee lover, specifically bulletproof coffee, I want to start off with your cool coffee venture. Tell us about how it started and what you're up to.
Sure. So I guess the end of 2014, two friends of mine and I were sitting around and we were drinking some coffee that they had been roasting in this tiny micro coffee roaster in their basement. And I was like, this coffee is pretty good. It's not the best coffee I've ever had, but this is pretty good. And you made this in your basement? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, let's do something with this. And we just decided in that afternoon, after talking for a couple of hours, that we were going to take that coffee and we were going to find a space in town and just set up a coffee shop for a month. So we approached Salt of the Earth in Garfield and pitched it to their executive chef and their GM, and they let us take over their space for 4 Saturdays in February last year. And we roasted enough coffee for what we thought was going to be the entire month for all 4 weeks. And then the first week that we had this pop-up event, we ended up having about 5 times as many people as we were expecting. We had a line out the door, and we ran out of coffee, which meant that we had to order new coffee, and we had to stay up night and day for like 3 or 4 days roasting coffee nonstop in this tiny little coffee roaster. It's called Alva Coffee, which is kind of a nod to Thomas Edison, whose middle name is Alva, trying to kind of play off of this kind of his inventiveness and applying that to what we were trying to do. But for us, it was really just an experiment, an experimentation in branding, an experimentation in events, and in utilizing spaces in different ways. And I don't think we thought it was going to be quite as successful as it was. And, we had people asking us, when are you going to open your own shop? And when are you going to start roasting on a large scale? Where can I buy more? And we're like, we're not. Which I think surprised a lot of people. And I think for us, it was really about seeing, can we have an idea? Can we execute on it to the highest level? Can we create a really compelling brand and a really compelling narrative and have it be successful? And that was really all we tried to do. And we did it. It was successful. We, ran these 4 very successful events and then shut it down.
So a couple of things, because I like it from a marketing standpoint. It truly is no BS marketing. When you went 1-for-1 talking to Salt of the Earth, right? You decided who you wanted to talk to, so you must have segmented it pretty correctly to go out and talk to one person and close them to agree to let you do it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking about spaces in town, and we were basically just like, who has the best space in the city right now for what we want to do? And we're like, Salt of the Earth. They have, had this beautiful, modern, open air, very dynamic space, and they're also not open for breakfast or lunch. So we felt like it was an easy pitch to them to be like, hey, let us do this really interesting event on Saturday mornings, and you guys can do food if you want. You'll make a little money. You'll get better exposure for your business. So they agreed to do it. They didn't charge us anything. They didn't take a cut of any of the money that we made. They really saw it as, marketing for them, as a way for them to be seen as, an innovator, someone who's doing something that's kind of unique and a little different, and invite people into their space that wouldn't have ended up there otherwise.
So that was excellent. So now let's take the second part of that. So you targeted who you wanted to talk to as a distribution. They were open-minded and saw it as a win-win without taking any fees from you, and both parties were very visionary there. So now what did you do to market that? Because it sounds like a huge success to have people out the door the first day.
Yeah, especially to have people out the door in the middle of February. So, I mean, really, we kept it pretty simple. We created social media accounts for Coffee with Alva, and we, kind of got in touch with some of our, friends who we think are tastemakers in the city. And we're like, hey, we're doing this event. Would you consider, retweeting a tweet that we put out, or, mentioning it to some of your friends? We got picked up by, Next Pittsburgh wrote an article about us. We got a few other blogs in town to write some things. And then I think word of mouth just kind of spread around town. And, the first week was huge. And then the second week was almost twice as big as that. And then the third week was kind of near blizzard conditions, but we still sold out of product that week too. So, we really didn't, we didn't spend any money. We didn't spend any money marketing. We couldn't afford to, because it wasn't, this isn't like a $1 million business idea. But we believed so strongly in our idea, and that we thought that people would really connect with it. And we didn't think we would have to spend any money, and we didn't. So
it works well in the first year, and now you're doing it again now.
Yeah. We were really talking about whether or not we wanted to do it again, because we felt like the first year was such a unique concept to have all of this, what we called micro roasted coffee, that, we were roasting this coffee in really small batches. So really every 4 or 5 cups of coffee was from its own individual unique batch of coffee, which was an enormous amount of work for us, but we think provided a really unique experience. So the only reason we decided to do it again this year was we came up with an idea to, instead of roasting the coffee ourselves, try to source coffee from what we think are some of the best roasters in the world that don't have any presence in Pittsburgh. So we're getting coffee from Spy House Roasters in Minneapolis, and also from Reykjavik Roasters in Reykjavik, Iceland. And we're also trying to finalize some acquisition with a roaster in Colombia, trying to get some coffee directly from origin, where they're growing the beans there, they're harvesting them, and they're roasting them. But they've been a little slow getting back to us, so we'll see if they end up. But right now, yes, Spy House Roasters and Reykjavik Roasters.
So for all of our no BSers out there that are listening and they want to stop and have some of the coffee, give them all the details.
Sure, yeah. It's going to be every Sunday in February, and we're going to be in the Cloakroom, which is the event space behind the Livermore in East Liberty. And we'll be there from about 9 to 2 every Sunday. As possible, we'll be open a little later depending on crowds. But yeah, that's the basic details. And we'll have a DJ there every week playing some music. And the Livermore will be providing some kind of light brunch food as well. So you can come in, get a snack, try some coffee from Iceland. We'll also have some coffee, some chocolate that's imported from Iceland as well. That's a collaboration between this roaster and kind of the premier artisan chocolatier in Iceland, which is called Amnam.
So what's your connection to Iceland?
I was in Iceland about 6 weeks ago, just on a kind of a walkabout. And I ended up staying in an Airbnb right next to this roastery for this Reykjavik Roasters, and became, kind of fast friends with the owner of the roastery. And that's kind of what rekindled this idea for us, was we should get this amazing coffee from Iceland and have people in Pittsburgh try it. We're
with Doug Northcook, who at first I thought maybe the tie to Iceland was he has one of the best beards in the region. And so Suzanne will pop a picture up on Instagram. But Doug, wanted to tell that story about the coffee because I think it shows marketing in so many respects. Targeted marketing of how you got the operation started, targeted marketing with the salt of the earth, and how you used grassroots guerrilla marketing to have people standing out the door. But that's not the sole reason Doug is here. Doug is what I call a marketing problem solver. He has great marketing instincts, understands business. So I want to go back, way back. Tell us a little bit about your early years, how some of the stuff that got you to become this marketing, you honed your already existing instincts.
Sure, yeah. I was just talking with a friend about this the other day, kind of going way, way back to kind of my early years as an entrepreneur. And I had forgotten about a business that I started when I was like 11 years old, when the Nintendo 64 came out. And I had all these friends who wanted to play, they wanted to play every game that came out for the Nintendo 64. And I wanted to own every game. So I came up with the idea that I would get enough money to buy 5 or 6 games from my paper route, and then I would rent those games out to my friends. Okay. So I made membership contracts, I made laminated membership cards, and I rented games out to people that I knew in the neighborhood. And I used that money then to buy more games and then rent out more games. And, when I was like 11, I was, making enough money to buy my own video games and buy my own candy at the candy store. And that was kind of my first foray into, entrepreneurship and kind of creating a service where I was like, this is something people want. If they go to Blockbuster, they have to get their parents to take them, and they have to spend, $5 a day. And I was like, they can pay me $2.50 a day plus late fees. And, I can drop them off at their house when I come over to hang out. So
did you hire the toughest kid in the neighborhood to help you get the late fees collected?
No, I did that myself. I did that myself. I was actually telling a friend that I actually had to call one of my friend's moms once because he had 3 games out that were 2 weeks overdue, and he owed me $25. So I called his mom, and his mom made him bring me back the games and bring me $25 and also give me back his membership card. Because he was no longer allowed to rent video games from my company. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
So that was kind of my initial jump into kind of thinking about some of these ideas. And when I was around 14 or 15, I started printing T-shirts. I started coming up with kind of these goofy T-shirt designs, having them printed by a T-shirt printer in Kansas. I got my dad to let me use his credit card to do these orders. I would get these T-shirts in, and then I would go to events and sell these T-shirt designs. And then I put up a website and started selling T-shirts and jackets and hats and all different kinds of things.
And it was profitable?
Yeah, it was really profitable. At least for me when I was like 16, I made probably several $1,000s, maybe close to $10,000 while I was in high school, just selling T-shirts around town, which was way more money than any of my friends had. So that, quickly translated into handling all of my friends and related people's printing needs. So somebody needed t-shirts, somebody needed booklets, somebody needed whatever it was. I kind of became the go-to guy up into college. And then that got pretty boring pretty quickly, kind of acting as like a weird printing broker for odds and ends. And so I ended up in college and ended up getting really interested in film through relationships with a couple of friends. And we formed a small film production company in Chicago that we ran for about 3 years, the three of us together, and got a couple of short films into the New York International Film Festival and a couple other film festivals, and did some really great creative work. And that company's still operating now in Pittsburgh, actually, Mothlight Creative. And I took a buyout from there about 5 years ago to go out and try some new things. So I've kind of been, through a lot of these different spaces, and along the way spent some time in publishing, doing marketing and web development, and then also spent some time in customer service and customer experience design at another company. And then about 2 years ago, left my job to start the company that I run now, which is called Decoder, which is a kind of full service design and marketing agency. We focus on strategic planning and kind of long-term creative execution. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the quick summary of a lot of different things.
Well, we'll get into all of that, but I also want to talk about you. So you got married, and your name is now Doug North Cook.
Right. Yeah. So I'm married for almost 6 years now, and all of my names, so my full name is Douglas Freeman North Cook. Douglas is my mother's maiden name. Freeman is my father's great-great-grandmother's maiden name, and is my father's middle name and his father's middle name. And then North is my wife's last name, and then Cook is my dad's family last name. So when my wife and I got married, I kind of decided that I wanted to have all of the last names. And then my wife and I kind of wanted to demonstrate this show of equity and kind of a shared existence together. So we decided together to incorporate each other's names. So now all of my names are actually all family last names, including my first and middle name. So
you are legally Douglas North Cook?
I am, yeah. I actually had to go to the courthouse and fill out all this paperwork. I had to advertise in the Pittsburgh Legal Journal and in the Tribune that I was changing my name in case anyone had any legal action out against me as Douglas Freeman Cook. Mm-hmm. They could see that I was changing my name, and then I had to go appear before a judge and tell him why I was changing my name. And then I legally changed my name, and then my wife assumed my last name.
And she keeps North too.
Yeah, so she's North Cook as
well.
Yeah.
It's a interesting concept. Do you know of is it taken off? Are there more people that have done this? Because it just does sound like something that I think could become more common.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty common practice now that people hyphenate their names. So you'll have the two last names, and they'll be kind of joined together by a hyphen.
But is it typically both people?
Yeah, it's typically both people will do that.
Okay.
I mean, that's still not the norm by any means. The norm is that still the woman will take the husband's last name. But I actually do know a couple of friends who the husband took the wife's last name because he thought it was a cooler last name. And he wanted that one.
I would have done that if it were this time. It was
right.
a long time ago I got married, but my wife's maiden name is Page. Yeah. So we still use that for ordering pizza and stuff. Right. Because Mastovich to Page is no.
But it's actually a common practice in Latin America to combine the two names. It's called a double-barreled last name.
Okay.
So
interesting stuff. So, Doug, one of the catchphrases out there now is digital marketing.
Sure.
And you and I have had the chance to work together in helping clients with their quote-unquote digital marketing. Since it's no BS show, talk a little bit about how sometimes that phrase digital marketing can really be BS because really marketing is marketing. So talk about good digital marketing or whether you even need the phrase digital in front of marketing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when people talk about digital marketing, they're usually not talking about anything.
And that's BS.
Right. And
we forgot the BS button again.
When most people talk about digital marketing, they're really talking about pay-per-click marketing. They're talking about lead generation. They're talking about search engine optimization. But when people talk about digital marketing broadly, it really doesn't mean anything. But people can get very deceived with digital marketing, and in the same way that people get deceived by print marketing too. Which there's kind of this divide there and this split that people can come for. They go to somebody and they're like, we've heard we need digital marketing, and the company's like, yeah, well, we'll take care of that for you. And you'll pay them, a $10,000 retainer, and then they will literally not do anything. And I've actually run across this with a handful of my clients where I go into a meeting with them and they're like, oh, well, we have this great digital marketing company that we work with. And I'm like, okay, well, what do they do for you? And they're like, well, they handle our SEO. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? And they're like, well, they make sure that we're, ranked highly on Google. And I'm like, well, are you ranked highly on Google? And most of the time they can't even tell me the answer to that question. And what it usually turns out is that they've been paying, a few $1,000s a month retainer to a company that literally has done no work. Because SEO specifically is this kind of sorcery that exists behind websites where, there are definitely best practices that you need to have in place for SEO that you have to have. But when people say, oh, well, we're going to do your SEO, what they really mean is we're going to do the handful of things that Google says you should do, and then we're going to let it sit there for months. That's what most companies tell you. And they're, you think you have this amazing relationship with somebody who's doing all this great work, but in actuality, they may have done 2 hours of work the first week when you signed the contract, and they haven't done anything since. Mm-hmm. So.
That's the typical BS that you go and compete against. And what that does for firms that are all about results, like Mass Solutions, we go in and we're punished then because they've had a couple firms like that, and then they start they just overanalyze the proposal and they get hung up on nonsense, and it's because there's some bad actors out there that pulled off the BS marketing. So let's segue into when maybe you were a BSer. Talk about a learning experience when maybe you were a tough boss, or maybe your communication wasn't what it needed to be, or maybe you were the BS employee. Looking back, when do you think you might have been guilty of some of it?
Guilty of some BS?
Yeah.
Oh man, good question. I think there's. Let me pull up two experiences. I'll give one where I was kind of on the receiving end of someone else's BS. Where we were my company was dealing with a prospective client last year, and they came to us and said, well, we have these 5 problems with our website that we need fixed. And we went in, we had a meeting with them, we looked in, we actually realized that there weren't 5 problems with their website, there were about 100 problems with their website. And so we told them, ethically, if we fix these 5 problems for you, it's not going to solve anything. Because they're a pretty large company, and they were only getting about 160 visitors to their website over a 6-month period.
That's staggering.
Which is unbelievable. They should have been getting 60,000 in 6 months, not 160. And when we told them this, they were like, well, we love our current website. We love the way it looks. And I was like, okay, well, you could make a website that looks and feels like that, but you have to rebuild this. And ethically, we just won't fix these 5 things because that'll cost you, because the way your site's built, it'll cost you almost as much as just building a new website from scratch. And they just weren't convinced. So we sat down with a handful of people and tried to shop this idea around, and they got so stuck on this idea that no, we just want these 5 things. And then another firm came in and said, yeah, well, we'll do these 5 things. And they spent more money with that firm than they would have spent with us to build a new website that was in line with current standards, would have gotten them higher ranked, so they would have gotten some actual traffic to their website. And that was just, this situation where we try to do the ethical thing and provide them a real solution, but somebody else comes in and charges more money for a BS solution.
Yes. Now, do you have the sense that site's still probably around the same traffic level?
I actually looked at it 2 days ago just to see if they'd actually done anything, and they haven't even implemented the improvements yet that I know they already paid for. So I'm sure that it's still in the same boat that it was last year.
That's some BS.
Yeah.
Now, how about you? We always have to put the person on the spot, and when maybe they've been the BSer.
Yeah. Let me think on this for a second. Okay, so when I was working at this publishing company when I was living in Chicago, I was on their digital marketing team, and my direct boss was so kind of furiously busy all of the time, and would not delegate projects properly. And so he came to me and was like, well, we need to edit these 50,000 pages on this website to move them over to this new platform. And I was like, okay, sounds good. Then I went and looked and realized we don't actually need to edit any of this. We don't need to edit any of this. We don't need to move any of this. And there was two options then for me. It was I could go to my boss and try to fight with him about whether or not we should actually make all these edits before we transition to this new platform, or I could write an automation for it to do all these edits for a job that he thought was going to take 3 months, and just set an automation to do it in a day. And so I did that. I made this automation, which took me about 3 or 4 days to clean up all the pages. And then I went to him and said, I'm pretty much done with this editing project. And he was like, well, just keep working on it. So I just spent the next 3 months basically doing nothing at this company, even though my boss basically knew that I was doing nothing. But that was a situation for me where I was really early on in my career, and was, just didn't think to be like, oh, well, I should be being proactive. I should be developing new ideas. I should be going above and beyond to implement some new thing. I should be doing experiments. I should be learning. Instead, I just, kind of let my automation run many, many more times to make sure that everything was done properly. And I just watched episodes of Lost in my cubicle. So that was partially my BS, but looking back, there's things that I would have done differently, and I would definitely do differently now. But also, I was in this environment that just allowed for that. I was in an environment where the marketing team wasn't operating at a level that allowed for me to be encouraged to do a higher level of work, and was so concerned about just trying to keep me busy, that there wasn't actually a focus on real productivity or real ideas.
Exactly. It was cultural. So
Yeah.
there was a lack of leadership, and the culture kind of didn't push for the proactive nature that
Right.
you were capable of doing.
And I got caught up in the culture there. There was a day when my boss asked me if I would go get some blank CDs because we'd run out. And I was like, okay. So I walked to Staples, which was like a 45-minute walk. I got an ice cream cone on the way. I went to the park on the way back. I came back like, I think it was like 3.5 hours later with a spindle of like 12 blank CDs. And my boss was like, hey, thanks so much.
That's beautiful.
But immediately after leaving there, the big reason why I left is because there was no challenge. There was no, even at the end of my time there, I went to my boss and was like, hey, can you give me more work? Like, can I work on this other project? Or I have this idea. And he was always like, I don't have time to talk to you about this. So I would, there'd be some weeks where I would just sit in my cubicle with literally nothing to do. Even like trying to ask other people in the office, is there something I can help out with? And just getting caught up in this BS culture of, we'll pay you to sit here, but we're not even going to give you work to do. We're just going to pay a butt and a seat. So
it's amazing to me. We are with Doug North Cook He is one of the marketing problem solvers here in the Pittsburgh region, has his hands in a lot of businesses, started and sold businesses, still owns some, and is currently, his major driving force is Decoder Designs, and he is the CEO of that company. And right now I'm going to put him on the spot and ask him, what's the big idea? When it comes to messaging, we have to understand both our why, or reason for being, and our customers' why, or reason for buying. We then need to crystallize that into one big idea, one memorable message or theme that makes an emotional impact on our target audiences. So whether it's for you personally, Doug, or any of your companies, you can pick whatever one you want. What's your big idea?
Big idea. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, actually, about what is the purpose of a company? And related to that, what's the purpose of marketing? And there are so many companies that exist that are all trying to solve the same problem the same way. And it's just varying degrees of effectiveness and varying degrees of cost. And that is not the kind of business that I want to be involved in. It's a commodities-based business, and at a certain point, it becomes a meaningless business when you have enough saturation in a market, and there's so much competition that everybody ends up kind of just beelining to the bottom. And that, I think, has become the case with the way that so many people approach their marketing too, is that they're just like, well, we need to market. So you see, people talk about, you'll hear an SEO expert say like, well, you need to write blog posts. So people will just write blog posts to write blog posts, or they'll create videos to create videos, or they'll do whatever it is they think they should be doing, but without any thought or thinking behind it. And I've tried to take steps pretty far back with that to say, when I'm talking with my clients about marketing, that if you're thinking about your marketing as you trying to sell something to a client or to a customer, you're thinking about it the wrong way. That you're just trying to like get yourself in front of them as much as possible, when your marketing should really be you providing real tangible value to your client. So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to write a blog post, let's only write a blog post if we actually have something to say. Let's not write a blog post that's like the 5 coolest Christmas gifts to get for your husband this year. I see posts like that on blogs for large companies that aren't retail companies, that aren't product companies, that are, they might sell wire metal baskets. Mm-hmm. They might be a manufacturing company, but they're writing blog posts about, the coolest bar in town.
I call it creative for the sake of creative.
Right.
That's a big problem. It has been forever in the history of marketing, advertising, and branding, is there are a lot of people that do creative for the sake of doing creative.
Right.
We want to do creative to solve problems, and that's what no BS marketing is.
Right. People think, well, we need to demonstrate that we're cool, or that we're approachable, or that we're fun, and our blog or our marketing can be a way to do that. And I'm like, if you think that people want to buy a product from you because you're cool, approachable, and fun, you're wrong. That might be the case for a small percentage of people, but that isn't going to come across on your blog. That's going to come across when they meet you and when they interact with your team.
Exactly.
What they want to see in your marketing is, are you the best at this? Are you the absolute best at this? And is what you're best at valuable? And for a lot of companies, the answer to both of those things is no, that their product isn't valuable and that they themselves are not the best at doing it. And usually their marketing reflects that. So if you have a bad product, then your marketing oftentimes is going to reflect that. That it's really hard to create passion and excitement around a bad product. So you'll see a marketing campaign for some new technology product, and for like a new low-end Windows laptop, for instance, you'll see a marketing campaign and it's so uncompelling, so unbelievably uncompelling, because there's so little emotion and so little quality for this low quality product. You take like Apple on the other extreme, who, they are able to instill emotion and love into these products and into their marketing and into their advertising, because they have a product that can hold those messages because of its quality.
And they basically answered the two whys, their reason for being and their customer's reason for buying.
Right. And they're an interesting example because they have been able to do something that very few companies can do, which is that they don't necessarily just try to create the best product in the market, or the best product based on what they think customers want, which is what most technology companies will do, which is what features do people want in X product. So if it's a laptop, well, let's just put more speed or more RAM or whatever it is. But because in reality, Apple products are not the fastest. They're not the smallest. They're not anything. What they are is they're different. So they've created this idea of they don't go out and find what their customers want. They create products that their customers don't even know that they want. And then they sell them that.
Mm-hmm. Think different.
Mm-hmm.
So Doug, how can listeners contact you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
Oh, good question. Let's see. You can go to our company's website, which is decoderdesigns.com. You can email me at doug@decoderdesigns.com. Those are probably the two easiest ways to get a hold of me and our company and what we're about and what we do.
Remind them one more time about the coffee thing.
Yeah, Alva Coffee. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Coffee with Alva. And yeah, we're going to be next to the Livermore in East Liberty every Sunday in February from about 9 to 2.
Doug, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us for the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast. Visit nobullshitmarketing.biz, B-I-Z, for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for light reading? You'll receive valuable strategies every other week to improve your marketing and transform your message. It really is light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions